Right. Morning, everybody. I'm glad you're here today. We're so excited. I tell you, my granddaughter. Yeah. Come on, give me a picture. Give me a picture. I got to get a picture. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Yeah. Did I tell you about her? Yeah, sorry. I didn't get a picture of yours. So Josh and Karen also have a grandbaby the same day. And his name is what? Oliver Dean. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Same day, but you know. Yeah, so we'll just keep that up there. Will that distract you guys or anything? Are we good? All right. I'll just kind of look at it every now and then. Help me out here. Church will be short today. All right. Yeah, it's going to be short today. I'm going to go see her again. Haven't seen her enough this week. Huh? Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I already talked to her this morning. So it's like, anyway. All right. Well, hey, let's go to Proverbs. Well, 1 Thessalonians 4 is the first verse I've got on here. Let's look at that first. We're talking about, again, handling the net. We're talking about how to reach someone for Christ and what important thing. Today, we're going to talk about the learning to be still when you're talking to someone. Sometimes we say too much. Anybody else ever done that besides me? You're like, there's a void of noise, and so I'm going to fill it with my words. That's not always the best decision, right? So, actually, just a little parent tip for you. If you're talking to your kids and they're, you can't get through, just stop talking and let them run out of words. Or say something and then let that thing you said just echo and end period. Just let that thing echo in their head. Whatever you said, just let it echo. And don't add anything to it. Don't take anything from it. Just let it echo. And after they're done talking, that thing that you said was like, what? Wait, what? And they'll replay it in their minds. Learn to be still. That's a very, very, a very good tool in everything, in communication. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 says in verse 11, that ye study to be quiet and do your own business, to work with your own hands as we command you. Study to be quiet. It's something you have to learn how to do. It's not always easy, is it? Because, someone says something and you immediately want to reply, right? That's the way I am. Come on, dial it back, hold on to yourself, keep the reins. I don't need to reply immediately. You don't need to defend myself immediately. That's your immediate reaction, right? Someone says something, well, that's not right. That's not how I feel. And so you jump right in and they're not listening. And you're not listening. So communication is not being done, right? Well, it's the same thing when you're talking to someone about the Lord. The Bible instructs us to study to be quiet. Proverbs 17 says in verse 28, even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. Remember Abraham Lincoln said that it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak up and remove all doubt. Right? That's a great statement. So learn to be still in the presence of anger. When someone's angry, this is something we got to work on. Sometimes your queries, your questions will cause one to become angry and lose his temper. Tendencies to fight back. Don't allow that to happen. The Bible instructs us that a soft answer turneth away wrath. Proverbs 15:1 says that a soft tongue breaketh the bone. That's Proverbs 25:15. If you have control of your own tongue and do not immediately give an answer to the anger, the one who is angry will burn out and tend to cool down, at which point you'll be able to make a wise and gentle comment. 2 Timothy 2:24 says, the servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle. This is really, really difficult, but it's very, very important. I play that over in my head all the time because I need it. I'm not a gentle person by nature. Anybody here, some of you ladies in here are probably gentle. I'm just not. And so it's something I have to work at. You say, well, this is just who I am. You got to take me as I am. No, I don't. You don't have to take me as I am. I need to fix those problems, right? I know a lot of people say, well, I'm just this kind of a person. You just got to get used to it. If you don't like me, you're going to, no. You have a responsibility to change your behavior, right? I don't have a responsibility to like your bad behavior, right? You've got to change it. So that's your responsibility. So these are things, when he says study to be quiet, he talks about your anger. Keep control of yourself. Don't say it's my turn to be angry. James chapter 3, verse 2 says the tongue is an evil member set on fire. Later on in the chapter, you can read James chapter 3 about the tongue. The tongue is an evil member set on fire of hell. The tongue can start huge problems. We'll talk about this more in a second. Number 2, learn to be still in the presence of a talkative person. Sometimes you got to let them get it out of their system. Now, to be sure, I've been around people that I've wondered if it will ever end. They go from one story to the next. They're full of stories. And, I have a tendency to be that way too, because, look what I do for a living. Fill time, But it's like you fill time with words. That's what I do for a living. You've got to... I do a radio broadcast every Sunday morning. I don't know if you ever heard it, but it's a 2-minute thing. And so I have a timer, and I have the judge. It's on WMCI. I have to watch that clock, and I got to cram everything in 2 minutes. On the radio, for a radio person, one of those, people that are announcers, they say 2 minutes is a lot of time. They laugh at me because 2 minutes isn't very much time for me. It's like, boom, it's done. So you got to really, it's a discipline. It's a really good exercise, but it's very difficult to do. Sometimes a person that's talkative, after they've expressed themselves, you might have the opportunity to get a word in edgewise. You may not, and if not, you don't. Try it in another day. Everything you say will fall on deaf ears because what's going on, a talkative person, they're concentrating on what they have to say and what they're going to say next. They're not paying any attention to what you're saying. Right? So they're thinking, okay, so this is what I'm going to say, and then you say something, well, then they're going to argue back, and then they're going to argue back. Listening is so, so, so important. Number 3, learn to be still in the presence of one who argues. Most of the cults want to argue point for point. Let them give all their schooled arguments. When they're finished, they run out of all of their talking points. They got nothing more to say. Remain silent and try to find some point which you can agree. You'll put them off balance. If they're arguing that works are necessary for salvation, agree with them. You say, listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. You know works aren't necessary for salvation, right? So are you lying to them? No. Jesus' works are necessary for salvation, not your works. Right? Somebody had to pay the bill. Nothing's free. Right? So you come back with, you say, well, you got to work your way. Oh, yeah, you're right. Nothing's free. Oh, you don't have to work your way, but yeah, work is important. Nothing's free. But then bring back the point that Jesus is the one who paid the bill. You see? And in that way, you can have a good debate. When they find themselves at a loss for words, there's no apparent argument to state that it is the works of Christ that are necessary. See that? I've mentioned my Hindu doctor friend that I have ongoing conversations with. And he introduces me now as his friend. And we have conversations, and this process is long. It's not something, I'm not going to get him to pray a prayer in the hallway in 5 minutes. It's not going to happen. Because he's been raised in the Hindu culture. He only came to America in 1992, which isn't very long ago. He's only been in our country that long. So his whole culture, everything is different. He thinks the Democrats are wonderful. He thinks the Democrats have got, so how am I a friend of his, right? But anyway, so we've had political discussions, we've had all kinds of discussions, but we keep finding common ground, and that excites him. For some reason or other, he gets just blessed out of his gourd that I found something that I agree with him on. And little by little by little, we've talked about things. The fact is, in the Hindu culture, there's things like karma, right? You know what karma is, right? Karma is what you do is going to come back to you. What does the Bible say about that? You reap what you sow. It says the same thing, doesn't it? It's basically a law of life. The Hindus don't have they don't have a corner on that. That's just the way it is. You will reap what you sow. If you sow something, you're going to reap it. It's going to happen. You sow bad attitude, you sow anger, you're going to reap that back. It's going to happen. So they call it karma because they've recognized that that's there. And I said, well, hey, we talked about that one day. And I said, hey, the Bible says that. He said, really? I said, yeah, it's in there. Just like that. We believe the same thing about that. And little by little, we've been able to, I don't lie to him at all. We don't lie at all. When I find common ground, I find common ground. When we don't have common ground, I say, I agree with this, but I don't agree with that. Right? But it's all friendly. It's a complete different kind of debate. I know your tendency sometimes, and mine is too, is to call people idiots when they don't think squarely. And there's no end of material for us in our culture for people that are just idiots. But I'm going to tell you something. Looking at someone and calling them an idiot is not a good debate technique. It doesn't help them. Their immediate, when you come across like that with words like that, their immediate response is self-defense. What you've got to do is break down the self-defense barriers. So they'll start opening their minds and thinking. Okay? Because honestly, truth can stand scrutiny. Never forget that. Anything that's true can be looked at from every angle and it'll still come up true. And people that are seeking truth will find it. If it's true, people that are seeking truth will find truth. You know why? Because God really is not trying to conceal everything. Have you read the last book of the Bible? It's called Revelation. He's trying to reveal things to us. He's trying to explain to us. It's hard for us to wrap our heads around God. That's why it's so complex. Because parts of our brain don't work. And that's a fact for all of us. There's parts of our brain that cannot see and understand. And there are some people that are blinded. God just shuts that switch off on that part of our brain, and they're blinded. They cannot wrap their heads around it at all. So you've got to pray that God will flip that switch and open their minds, and then all of a sudden it's like, one day, bam. I remember, I'll tell you this story real quick. I've mentioned before, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time trying to reach the gangs of the street. David Wilkerson was one of my heroes, even though he was an apostolic and stuff, but he did some things, amazing things in New York City with the gangs. You've heard of Nicky Cruz, and you've probably heard of, there's this teen challenge that come out of all of that. It's still around, still helping people. Well, anyway, so that he was like, David Wilkerson, I just thought that was pretty amazing what he'd accomplished. And so when I was a young preacher, that's what I decided I wanted to do. I went out, I would go to the streets, and I went to the gangs, and I tried to reach them. And one day, there's this one house in Syracuse that they were from another town. I won't say what other town, but this other town nearby had this group of gang members. They called themselves, the Nighthawks, I think is what they called themselves. And they would come and they would congregate. You could show up at any time of the day or night, and that house would be full of adults. And you're like, does anybody have a job? Yeah. They were salesmen, entrepreneurs, selling things that we won't discuss. But anyway, that's what they were. And so I would show up to the front there. And I remember this one particular day, I went to visit them and talk to them, because one of the ways I made connection with them was the children, was able to get the children to church on a bus. We would run a bus out there and pick them up. And so that's how I would stop and ask them if they wanted to come to Sunday school, that kind of thing. And then I got involved with some of them and got to know some of them. And I remember this one day, they started piling out like rats out of a sinking ship. And they filled the porch. I mean, there had to have been 15 gang members. And they started poking at me and making fun. And Preacher Dan, they used to call me Preacher Dan. Preach to us. Give us a sermon. I said, you serious? Yeah. I said, well, sit down, shut up. And I got down in front of him, and I had this entire gang on the porch, and I had a pocket Bible with me, and I pulled it out, and I started preaching to them. Well, when I got done, they all clap my hand, half of them were drunk or high or something. So it didn't really get very far. But afterwards, one pulled me aside, and he said, I got a friend that maybe you can help him. I said, what's going on? He says, well, he's seeing things. And he told me some of the stories. This guy, he would be in the shower, and all of a sudden this woman would materialize in the shower. And the reaction was, it wasn't a real person. He was seeing things. And he would run out screaming into the yard naked. And he said his uncle had been a Roman Catholic exorcist. And he had his uncle's crucifix, which was encapsulated, and it was in a special little thing that his uncle had taken to use to cast out demons, whatever. Anyway, he had that on his wall, stuck on his wall, and hoping that it would drive away the demons, all the spirits he would see. We said, this guy's he's having a lot of problems, man. He's like, I said, well, my first reaction is he's tripping. Okay? Drugs. Well, the thing about drugs is that it unlocks parts of your brain. It does. It opens things. And all of that's not hallucination. Some of it's real. Just things that you can't see when your brain's shut down, when that part of your brain shut down. And if you want to, I've done research on this. I found that some of the people call it an angel switch. The scientists call it an angel switch. It's a lot of times when people are close to death, they experience things and see presences and stuff and it's part of your brain that does not work until you're at a very point, you're close to death. And that part of your brain starts working. And they put them on scanners and things and proved this. It's just pretty interesting. If you're interested in the subject, I have a book on it in my library. That might surprise you, but I do. The thing is that I thought that he was just having these drug overdoses, and so he was starting to burn on his brain. Well, so I went over to see him one night, and I'm thinking, not much I can do. And he comes out, and he's sitting on his front porch, and he starts telling me stories, things that have been happening in that apartment, stuff that had been happening. Things like his Led Zeppelin poster come off the wall and folded up and landed on something and didn't fall one way or the other, just stuck there. His Bible would be all of a sudden moved upside down and thrown across the room, nobody there. He was sitting in his front room one time watching TV, and the drawer would slide in and out on his kitchen was behind him, and the drawer with silverware would just go bam, 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 bam. And he's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, I'm still thinking at this time, dude, you're tripping. That's not really happening. That's kind of what I was thinking. So we go inside, and we turned off his record. For some reason, he was drawn to Blue Oyster Cult and some of those rock and roll groups, if you remember, those demonic stuff. They were using demons and stuff to actually push their material, and they were trying to, it was all a big stage presence thing, but some of them, I think, were messing with things they shouldn't have been messing with. So anyway, that's what he's playing. I said, let's turn off this, whatever it is, record, and we sat down and we're talking for a little while, and I explained to him the gospel. And at the time, I'm going to tell you, I felt the presence of God. I felt it like really strong. And you know how it is when you're talking to somebody about God, and it just seems like the words just come. And you never thought of it before, but there it is, and it's like, wow, that was pretty good. I need to write that down, sign my name to it, publish it. It was God. I'm thinking, wow, that was pretty amazing. It didn't do anything. The guy, it didn't help him at all. The more I talked, the more I explained, it didn't help him. Not even a little bit. There was no movement. The whole time, someone was irritating me. He had this cat that it was a tiger cat, and this cat would jump up and look over his shoulder at me and scratch down the back of the couch. The couch was one of those little efficiency apartments, had one bedroom and a bathroom, and then the living room and the kitchen and all that was in one room. So his couch was separating the kitchen. It was faced away from the kitchen. That cat would look at me and scrape, and it was really irritating me. And I mean, that cat did that probably, I don't know how many times, but 20, 30 times. It was just up and down, wouldn't stop moving. Very agitated cat. So, like, man alive, what can I say? What else can I say? I'm not getting anywhere with this guy. It was just like talking to a brick wall. I had a young teenage boy with me. He was sitting behind me, and I remember leaning forward and, trying to plead with this guy, pleading with him. And all of a sudden, hair on the back of my neck stood up. And I'm like, I felt like I couldn't breathe. The only way to explain to you how I felt was I felt like somebody was behind me with a knife and wanted to stab me. That's exactly what I felt. I turned around to look who was behind me, and it was that teenage boy. He's sitting there, and his face is white. I mean, he's scared. Nobody said anything. It was just all of a sudden, boom, this thing. And I looked at the guy. He was sitting on the couch, and he had gone into this statue. He froze, and his eyes just bugged out like that. And I looked around and at what he was looking at. He was looking at the bedroom. There was a curtain hanging in the bedroom, and that curtain started flapping. Like that, moving. There was no breeze. It was a hot summer night. No fan, nothing. That curtain just all of a sudden started whipping like that. And he said, "They're here." Now, I didn't have to ask him who was there, because I knew it wasn't my side. The only thing I could think to do at the time, I wasn't very old, and as a preacher, I didn't know a whole lot of things. I still don't know a lot about the demon world. I'll be honest with you. All I could think was, I got to pray to my God. I didn't say I got to pray to God. I said I got to pray to my God. And I got down on my face right in front of him on the coffee table, and I knelt there and I began to pray. And I'd heard from some of these guys that do this all the time that you claim the blood of Jesus. So my English teacher would have been proud. I started making up sentences with the blood of Jesus as fast as I can make them up. Everything I could think of. I didn't know what to do, what to say, but I'm like, the blood of Jesus saved me from my sins. Thank you for that. The blood of Jesus washed away everything. And I just kept saying that and saying that and saying, God, help me. And there for a minute, and all of a sudden I thought, what is going on here? I don't know. Nothing's changing. And so I stopped praying, and I looked up at him, and he hadn't moved. And that stupid cat had gone over into the corner of the room and had stopped, and it was sitting like a statue, just sitting there in a corner. Did not move. The whole time I'd been talking, it'd been moving and scratching and agitating. He went over and sat in the corner. So I'm like, well, nothing's changed. I still feel weirded out. Everything is, something's off in here. And so I just put my head down. I said, God, I'm staying right here. I'm not moving. We're not going anywhere till you do something. I don't care what you do, but do it. And I kept praying, and all of a sudden, it was like lights came on inside of my heart. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but all of a sudden, I felt this relief. It was just, whew, it was okay. I felt the burden lifted. I felt everything, and I looked up, and he was smiling, not laughing, not mocking, but the guy was sitting there, and he had a smile on his face. And he was breathing, and the curtain had stopped moving, and the cat never moved. That was a blessing. And he said to me, thank you. No one's ever been able to do that for me before. And I said, what did I do? He said, they're gone. They're gone. And wow, that's a blessing. They're gone. I didn't know what had happened. I knew God had done it all. I didn't cast out any demons. I didn't know what happened. But I looked at him and I said, Rob, I said, you know what you need to do. They're gone. I said, you need to get down on your face and ask Jesus to save you. Now is the time. He said, I'll do that. It wasn't a, listen to this argument. It wasn't a great argument. It was just, it's time, buddy. That switch had been flipped in his mind. He got down on his face and asked Jesus to save him. Boy, howdy. Do you know what he called me the next day and said the cat had died that night? Call me a cat killer. I didn't touch a cat. I didn't do anything with it. I promise. Truthfully. Here the Chinese restaurant had a sale the next day, but no, I'm kidding. Seriously. I wanted to tell you that story. It's fun to tell once in a while. But the truth is, everything I told you, it was not exaggerated at all. I could have exaggerated. It was not embellished. It was not exaggerated. I just told you exactly what happened. The fact is that no matter what my argument was, it wasn't going to do anything until something happened in his heart and mind. And he needed that opening. He needed that. And so that's why sometimes you have to be still in the presence of someone who argues. Sometimes you have to learn how to be still and let God do the work. And then when God does the work and he opens their heart and they see things the way they're supposed to see them, it's not hard at all. That's why I've often said, bring people to church. Bring lost people to church. Church is not about lost people. It's about fellowship of the believers. That's what it's about. But bring them to church. Because why? Because in this environment, the Holy Spirit's got more freedom to move. And sometimes that part of their brain is physiological as well as spiritual. That part of the brain, God will open it and let them see things that they hadn't seen before. Make sense? Okay. I have at the bottom here something interesting. So as you guys know, most of you know, I've been police chaplain for 30 years, something like that. And I have taught ethics to police officers multiple times. I'm currently ethics instructor for East Central law enforcement, all the police officers in East Central Illinois. One of the things that we talk about is de-escalation, how to stop. And so what I gave you here actually was 4 principles that we teach police officers on how to de-escalate a situation where someone is arguing and debating. Now, this past week, I gave some of these principles and some other things to our teachers in a teachers meeting. And so some of you guys that are teachers, maybe you'll find this is helpful to you. Maybe if you're parents, you'll find out that these principles might be helpful to you. And I'll kind of, and when you're talking to someone about the Lord, and there's an argument, and there's an altercation, and it looks like it's going to get heated at a family gathering, and you and Uncle Joe just aren't getting along. You know what I'm saying? Maybe these principles, and I'll kind of shape them for you just a little bit. I printed them out so if you wanted them exactly how we give them to police officers, so you can see but then we're going to adapt them here, okay? I wanted to give you these principles. Sometimes when you're talking to like children, for example, it can be like whack-a-mole. You're dealing with this and you're dealing with that and you're dealing with this and you're dealing with that, and it's like, anybody know what I'm talking about? It's like, well, you just like you're reacting to everything. And one of the things you want to do is get in the driver's seat. Because if you're playing whack-a-mole, you're not in the control of the situation the children are. This happens in a school, happens in a Christian school, happens in a public school, happens in a classroom, happens in a home. When the kids are driving, all you're doing is reacting. Kids are going to say stupid stuff. Good kids are going to say stupid stuff. We've had some scuffles this week in our school over clothing standards. We've done our very, very best to be as broad but basically our clothing standards are about like what the public school has, pretty close. The only difference is we enforce them. And when you enforce them, the kids say, these are stupid rules. Well, if you would look at the rules of the public school, how you're supposed to be dressed, that pretty much would be the same. But the public school doesn't enforce them. They just don't most of the time. Is that true? It's true. So, you go in there, the public school say, no midriff showing, whatever, and kids do it anyway, and nobody says anything, right? So one of the rules we have that some of these girls are pitching against is we're trying to be understanding and open to the culture and understand styles, change and stuff. So one of the styles that seems to be really popular right now is jeans that have holes in them. We have a teenage girl living in our house, and she come out. She said she didn't have anything else to wear. She's wearing these jeans with holes in them. I said, you look like a ragamuffin. You look like you slept under the bridge last night. Why do you want to look like that? I mean, you're beautiful. Why don't you dress that way? Why do you dress with looking like you can't afford clothes? I know that's an old guy saying that, but honestly, you know what I'm saying? So, okay, so these rules, so we understand they want to dress that way. So we put in the handbook, no excessive reps. So if it's a little bit, okay, we're not going to say anything. But in parentheses in the handbook, so that you understand what excessive rips mean, no skin showing. So these girls, they want to wear these jeans with the whole leg ripped out. We had some girl come to the track the other night, and from here to here, it's ripped out. And so she gets in and her knee sticks up, and there's just little bits of cloth hanging. I'm like, dude, that's not what we want in our Christian school, okay? If you're going to dress that way, you want to, but not, come on, just a little bit of decorum. So, anyway, what happens is, one of the girls puts a Snapchat up of the demerit she got, and she puts it on a Snapchat, doesn't know I see it. She still doesn't know. She won't know. I'm telling you guys, she doesn't know that I know. Some other kid responded to that. This is stupid. Some other things. They will not know that I know this. The kids. I'm not going to tell the kids that I know that. I told them last week. I said, "You guys remember? I was wearing a police uniform, so I had to do a police thing this week, and so I walked in and had to talk to them. I said, "This badge here, let's let you know that I know some things that you might not know that I know." Dispatch called me one day and said a couple of my kids were in the cornfield. I'm not going to tell you who, but I happen to know. And they're like, just keep them on edge. I told one young lady, I said, "You're not telling me the truth." She said, "What am I not telling the truth about?" I said, "You know." You know. I'm not going to tell you what I know. So anyway, but this thing is going on, and they're like, "Oh, how come these rules? These are such crazy rules." And so some of the kids have started to they're wearing excessive jeans, but they're wearing pants underneath the excessive rips. They're still wearing, the rule is no excessive rips, but they're wearing excessive rips, but they got the no skin showing, so they're wearing clothes underneath so they can still wear the excessive rips. I'm like, you're missing the point here. We want you to look nice, okay? Okay. So it's like it doesn't matter what rule I have. There's somebody that's going to, so we were in a meeting the other day with the kids, and just trying to be gracious and kind and explanatory and treat you guys with respect so you understand the rule. And one girl says, "Well, what if my excessive rips are below the knee?" Why are you asking that? No. Well, you let us wear shorts to the knee, so my skin is all showing below the knee. And Ryan looks at her and he says, "I know it's a stupid rule, but it's our rule. We just want to see if you can follow a rule." They don't get it. I don't understand what we're looking at. We're looking at some kind of decorum. I don't want my classroom to look like a bunch of homeless people. God bless the homeless people. We're trying to help them. But that's not what I want in my Christian school classroom. You know what I'm saying? And a little bit of rips, that's a little bit, okay. They're going to wear shorts. I'm not going to get out a ruler. I tell them shorts to the knee. But, if it's to the top of the knee, the bottom of the knee, just come on. You know what I'm saying? So what happens over the years in schools is those kids will always find the line. Kids will always find the line, and they'll push it right over the edge. So you're like, I'm going to be an adult. I'm going to explain this. I'm going to be clear and understandable. And they're like, no, I don't really care. It's just like you're talking, you're like, this is a stupid drill. That's the way they are. That's the way kids, because their prefrontal cortex isn't working, right? So what I can do is I can have a meeting every day. Let me explain this again. And I can get all bent out of shape. Or I can just let it all simmer down. Let them talk themselves into circles. And you know what the Bible says? You know yourself that you have cursed others. Right? When you hear your servant curse you. So I go into the hospital Friday night to see my grandbaby. Did I mention? Yeah. So anyway, so I go in to see my grandbaby, and I walk into the door, and you understand, I'm a hospital chaplain at Sarah Bush. I have 2 badges that open all the doors. When I want to go somewhere in the hospital, I go there. Everyone knows who I am pretty much. They all know I belong there. If I want to go up to this section, I want to go into the psych ward, I go into the psych ward. If I want to go wherever I go, I'll just pick up the phone and say, I'm coming in. This is Chaplain Dan. I'm here to see so-and-so. No, I'm used to that at a hospital. I walk in, I couldn't get past the door. Gestapo ladies sitting there behind, so you must wear a mask. I'm like, okay. I put a mask on. I said, can we go up to the waiting room? There is no waiting room. Like, it's a hospital. It's a freaking hospital. There's a waiting room. I said afterwards, well, that's stupid. And then I played back in my mind what the kids have been saying this week. See? It's like, I don't understand the rule. I don't have the responsibility that the hospital director has. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking, you guys, you're still in the dark ages. Come on. So yesterday we went up to see the grandbaby, and did I mention that? Yesterday. And I'm going to go up today as soon as the church is over. Can we just get through that real quick? So then we went up, and I walked in, and I said, okay, so we're going to go up. She's moved. She's in a different room. We're going to go up to the waiting room on the women's and children's. She said, no, there's no waiting room up there. You got to wait outside. I said, we got to sit on a bench outside. There's one bench. And everybody that's waiting to see somebody has to sit on that bench. And that's it. This is so stupid. And again, the Lord reminded me, thou knowest also that thou likewise hast cursed others. How many of adults here have ever seen a rule that somebody wanted you to do that you thought was stupid? Huh? Remember that next time your kid looks at you and says, your rule is stupid. Just remember. See, they have a different perspective than you do, right? So what do we do? What I was telling my teachers was, we don't have to deal with every situation and circumstance. You don't have to, well, they said it was stupid, so I'm going to get them in the corner and we're going to throw demerits at them. No. Just calm down. Everybody will be fine. Walk away. And there's some techniques to de-escalate all situations. So what we do with the police, we say ensure that your citizen contact procedures are legitimate and based on respect. So when you're talking to a child, a young person, or anyone for that matter, about the Lord, about anything, first thing you do is make sure that what you're having to say is legitimate and show them respect as a human being. Does that make sense? Be respectful. Because they're a real person with real thoughts, real perspectives, right? So show respect, number one. Number two, it says ensure your officers know their legal limitations prior to engaging the public. So know your legal limitations. Be careful. I used to do Bible club, and this one kid one time said to me, we got a bus, and he was just rambunctious, and he said, I'm not getting off the bus. I'm going to crawl underneath the seat. And I said, if you don't get out of the seat, if you don't get off the bus right now, I'm going to throw you out the back. Now, that was outside of my legal parameters. When he refused, you know what I did? I opened the back door and threw him out the back. I had to then go talk to the parents and apologize because he was pretty scuffed up. Now, I'll be honest with you, I never had trouble with him at Bible club anymore. But I was 18 at the time, and it was a stupid move, and I should not have done it. And I had to sit down and apologize to the parents. The parents said, "You should have kicked his rear." I'm like, "That's you, and that's not me." I was outside of my legal parameters. Okay? So understand, when you threaten, follow through, but make sure your threats, make sure that anything you say are inside of your legal parameters. Okay? Number 3, appreciate that to influence a person, you need to understand their perspective and purpose. So if you want to influence someone, you need to understand where they're coming from. This happens with children, happens with adults. I mean, basically kids don't get it, okay? You know that. Understand where they're coming from. Understand their perspective. You'll be able to influence them if you can understand their perspective. Does that make sense? Number 4, don't presume that what makes sense to you makes sense to others. That one's a big one. I mean, I can say something that makes perfect sense to me. I can present a picture, an idea, paint it the way I want to paint it, and it makes perfect sense to me. And half of the crowd in here is not going to get it at all because you don't have the same thoughts or ideas or connection points. So if you have these 4 principles in your mind, you can de-escalate a situation that's angry. Now think about this, Christian. Let's say next family gathering you go to. Listen now. Next family gathering you go to, you get into a conflict. That's not your role. Your role is to make peace, not conflict. Take these principles and see if you can't be a bridge. See if you can't be the person that's reasonable. See if you can't be the kindest person in the family, the most reasonable person in the family, right? Instead of the one that's always causing trouble. So, well, how do I witness? Well, witnessing does not always mean you're standing on the street corner saying, "You guys are going to hell." That's not witnessing. That's antagonizing. Right? So, my dad told me years ago about this young man that was in Bible school, and he was from the mountains of Tennessee, and he was like, "What you see is what you get. I'm just going to tell you how it is, and that's how it is." So his grandma died, and she had a still, and they sold whiskey and other things that when, their corn didn't grow on, their corn they kept in jars and that kind of thing, you know what I mean? And so Granny was pretty messed up and pretty bad, pretty wicked. So she died, and the family said, "Well, we got a preacher boy in college. We're going to have him do the funeral." So he goes back to the funeral, and he stands up there, and he says, "Now am I going to stand here and tell you Granny's in heaven, she isn't in heaven, she's in hell?" I'm like, okay, that's not how you do this. Right? Truth is, none of us know what happens inside of a person's heart, regardless. Amen. I say, "Well, they don't act like a Christian." How many times have you been there? Salvation comes from a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and that personal is capital P, between you and Jesus Christ. Right? And so really at a funeral, that's not how you do it. And in a family gathering, that's not how you do it. Are you with me so far? You understand what I'm saying? What you need to do is try to be the person who is the voice of reason. The voice that draws people. They want to gather around you. They want to talk about you. They want to talk about your life. They want to talk about things that are going on because they can breathe when you walk into the room. You bring sunshine. That's the kind of person you want to be, right? The person who listens. That's how you reach people. Okay? All right. Thank you.